The cake she pointed to had 12 strawberries on top, one for each year she'd already survived, and a glossy glaze that held a little mirror of the fluorescent lights above. The cashier told her it cost $7.49 without meeting her eyes. In her lap, Myra unfolded 3 crumpled dollar bills that still smelled faintly of the laundromat and her grandmother's peppermint gum. Before we begin, if this kind of story speaks to your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from. It's always beautiful to see how far stories like this can travel. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. The air inside Cowrie's bakery was always warmer than the street, thick with cinnamon and sugar, as if it remembered every cake anyone had ever celebrated with. Myra rolled herself forward, fingers splayed against the rubber rim of her wheel, and pressed the elevator button on the front of the refrigerated case. It hummed and the shelf descended, bringing the strawberry cake down to her eye level. "Can I buy half?" she asked. Her voice came out soft. She cleared her throat. "Like just half for a smaller price." The cashier, a girl with chipped black nail polish and a mouthful of gum, looked at the price tag and then at Myra. "We don't cut cakes," she said with the practiced boredom of someone used to saying no because the sign told her to. "You can get a cupcake. I want a cake." The word rounded inside Myra's mouth like something forbidden. The last time she'd had cake, her legs still worked and she'd run down the hallway with a sparkler in hand. She had danced on tiled kitchen floors and felt sure that she owned all future birthdays. Then 8 months ago, a bus ride had gone wrong and the word ever had cracked apart. Then it's $7.49. Myra smoothed the money that she'd ironed beneath a textbook that morning. $3. It had taken all summer to save it, collecting bottles, returning change. Every time her grandmother felt guilty and slid a quarter into her palm, Myra folded it away. She didn't tell Alma that she was saving for this one fragile circle of normal. "Here," the cashier sighed, pulling 2 cupcakes into a plastic clamshell. "These are day-old, $1 each." Myra shook her head. She had promised herself a cake, not 2 small reminders that compromises always shrank your dreams. And she'd promised it was silly, she knew, to blow out candles and pretend that the air itself could be persuaded. It wasn't really about sugar. It was about defiance. The line behind her shuffled. A man set his coffee down too hard on the counter. A lady in scrubs checked her watch. The world, as always, kept moving, as if the only stationary thing in the entire bakery were Myra's wheels. $7.49, the cashier said again, like maybe Myra hadn't heard. Myra felt the flush climb her cheeks. She stared at the strawberry glaze until her eyes watered and the cake blurred. In moments like this, shame was the heaviest part of her. Her wheelchair weighed 32 pounds, she knew, because she had read the manual. Shame had no manual and no wheels. "Hey," someone said behind her, a voice like worn denim, soft from use, frayed at the edges. "Wait." Chapter 2. The single dad and the girl with the cake. Gabriel Morales had come in for 2 things. Day-old bread, cheaper and perfect for French toast, and a muffin he would split with his daughter on the walk to the bus stop. He had not expected to see a girl carefully counting dignity in dollar bills. Luna pressed her warm hand into his. "Papa," she whispered around the gap where her baby tooth had been. "That's my cake." "It's not me, Amber," Gabe murmured. He crouched down to his 5-year-old's level anyway, his voice low amid the sounds of whirring mixers and the ding of the door chime. Luna's curls escaped her ponytail like they always did, catching crumbs of light. "But maybe we can share something sweeter than cake." He hesitated, feeling the familiar calculations unfold in the back of his mind like receipts. The rent due in 2 weeks, the electric bill, Luna's shoes already tightening around her toes, the late notice stuck to the fridge with a magnet that used to hold up Camilla's recipes, neat loops of handwriting he hadn't been able to bear to look at since. It would be so easy to look away. It would be practical, even. But practical had become a kind of prison for Gabe, a series of responsible choices that also happened to be cowardly. He stood up. "Hold this," he told Luna, handing her the paper bag with their bread. As he approached the counter, his palms went damp. He didn't know if the girl would accept help. He didn't know if the cashier would roll her eyes or if everyone would stare. He didn't know if he could afford to do this, but he knew he couldn't afford not to. He knelt beside Myra's chair to meet her eyes, and in that tiny shift, the entire geometry of the moment changed. He could see then that she was older than he'd thought at first, 13 maybe, with dark hair pulled back from her face and a thin scar along her jaw that might have been from braces or an accident. Her eyebrows were fierce and beautiful, like a declaration. "What's your name?" he asked. She lifted her chin. "Myra. I'm Gabe," he said, "and this is my daughter, Luna." He felt Luna lean into his side like a tide. "It's your birthday." Myra's eyes flicked to the cake. "Yeah, feliz cumpleaños," Luna said, proud to offer her 5-year-old Spanish to someone new. Myra smiled in spite of herself. "Gracias." Gabe glanced up at the cashier, who was watching with half interest and half dread, as if trouble caused paperwork. The line had grown, and someone behind them muttered, "Come on," under their breath. He swallowed. "Would it be okay," he said gently, "if I covered the rest? I was going to buy a cake for a thing anyway." He wasn't, but he figured even God forgave a lie that came with strawberries. Myra stared past him to the glass, into the reflection where she could pretend that this was a TV scene and not her own life. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady, "but I don't want you to feel like you have to." His chest tightened. He thought of Camilla, who had left this world the way she'd lived in it, gracefully, too soon, with her apron still dusted in flour. She would have nudged his shoulder now and said, "Go on, stupid. Let people say yes." "I don't have to," Gabe said. "I get to if you let me." Myra's hands were on her wheels, fingers poised the way they always were before she decided to bolt. Pride was a bird in her chest. It pecked at the bars. "Okay," she said finally, and the okay wasn't really surrender. It was a kind of bravery. The cashier exhaled as if relieved to finally be doing something and clicked at the keyboard. 749, she repeated. Gabe slid his card, an old plastic thing with a nick at the edge, and tried not to look as the machine thought. The green checkmark flashed, and he let out a breath. "Do you want us to write a name on it?" the cashier asked, pen hovering over the little frosting bag as if it were a wand. Gabe glanced at Myra. "What do you think?" Myra swallowed. "Myra," she said, "make it blue." "Blue," Luna repeated, as if it were a secret password that opened a city. The cashier's hand shook slightly as she squeezed the bag, coaxing out a ribbon of frosting that spelled the letters MIRA on smooth white. She added a little blue heart. It was lopsided, but it gleamed like a jewel. Each letter a little staked claim on joy. The manager, a man with starched sleeves, appeared from the back as if pulled by a magnet named accountability. Surveyed the scene, eyes flicking from the wheelchair to the cake to Gabe. "Any problems here?" "No," Gabe said with a calm he didn't feel. "Just a birthday." The man nodded and retreated, but not before letting his gaze linger on Gabe's work boots, on the frayed hem of his jeans. Gabe had learned in the months after Camilla died to recognize the particular way some people cost out your life in cents. He had learned to stand taller anyway. He turned back to Myra. "Do you live close?" he asked. "Do you need—" "I'm okay," she said quickly. "Then 2 blocks up on Mercer." "I can." She gestured at her wheels with a little shrug, pride again and something besides. She didn't want to be anyone's project. "Okay," he said. He didn't press. "Happy birthday, Myra." He lifted the cake and set it gently in her lap as if it were a sleeping cat. "May it be sweet." She swallowed again, and this time he saw tears in the brown glaze of her eyes, restrained by will. "Thank you," she murmured. She wanted to offer him something else, something better than 2 cheap words, but language sometimes was like the bakery's glass case, beautiful and cold and not as helpful as you needed it to be. "Bye," Luna sang, and then the door chimed over them all, and after that, the city. Chapter 3. Gravity and wings. The air outside had turned pearly in that way fall sometimes did, where every car hood and puddle reflected the sky like a trick. Myra balanced the cake with one elbow and pushed with the other, her palms aching where the wheel's ribs bit into skin. 2 blocks was nothing if the sidewalk was even and the cracks had learned to be kind. 2 blocks was a long time when the entire world's gravity seemed invested in making you remember your weight. "Do you want help?" The voice asked again, softer now, not at the counter anymore, but on the street, filtered through city sounds, the hiss of bus brakes, the rattle of a grocery cart, the chop of a helicopter somewhere invisible. She turned. Gabe stood at the curb with Luna on his hip, their paper bag of bread in his other hand. He'd taken 2 steps and then 3 and then apparently just kept going. He looked awkward about it. He looked nervous. He looked like he'd decided something and didn't know whether he'd regret it. "I can manage," she said, which she hated saying because sometimes it was true and sometimes it was armor. "But it's heavy. Can I carry it?" he asked. "You keep owning the wheels. I've got the cake." Myra hesitated. The weight in her lap had already sent tingles up her thighs, phantom messages from somewhere that had lost the address. She nodded. He lifted the cake carefully, and the box opened just enough for him to see the blue letters again. Myra, he said, testing the name in his mouth like a prayer. Papa makes good cakes, Luna announced as if this were relevant. I used to, Gabe said, the words tasting strange. My wife taught me. It was the first time he'd referenced Camilla to someone who didn't know him in months, and the syllables were fragile. They landed on the sidewalk and didn't break. He took that as a sign. You don't make them now? Myra asked. He shook his head. I haven't. He adjusted the cake so the box wouldn't tip. The smell of strawberry and vanilla floated up, sweet and grimly determined not to apologize for existing. Her name was Camilla. He stopped. He didn't want to spill everything at once on a stranger's shoes. I'm sorry, Myra said, because there was a specific tilt to someone's face when they used the past tense like that. She knew it because people did it around her sometimes, once athletic, once independent, once. Everybody was a museum of